country we know today as Syria is located right in the middle of what we would consider the Middle East region. And it has suffered or endured the many cultural and military upheavals and interactions that have gone on over the last 20 years or more in that region. And it stands as a shining example of resilience and capability. Um, Syria is one of the most historically rich and culturally rich areas of the world today. And they have managed that in spite of terrible conflict and outside influences throughout their history. Syria itself politically is recognizable as a country or as an entity as far back as the ancient Roman Empire and before. There are a number of distinctly Roman architectures in the area, including the amphitheater pictured here. This is the Roman theater at Bosra. Very recognizable design, very recognizable shape, undeniably a Roman piece of architecture. There's also history and evidence that people were living in and thriving even in Syria up to 200,000 years ago. According to the Virtual Museum of Syria, an excavation team, joint Japan and Syria excavation team, discovered fossilized Paleolithic human remains at a site called the Dideria Cave. That's about 400 kilometers north of Damascus. It was a Neanderthal child, which could have been up to 200,000 years old. People have been here for a very long time. History records that, and prehistory records that as well. Today, Syria continues to be at the middle of history in the making. The Israel-Palestine conflict taking place primarily to their south and west. They are weathering the storm that is this conflict. But as of April of this year, 2025, Al Jazeera.com, which is Syrian news, T4 in particular is a very strategically important airfield as it's near Palmyra, it's one of the most strategically placed and one of their largest airfields. Being central to the country, it gives them a lot of opportunity to provide support wherever it might be needed throughout the entire country. And there are roads that connect it to Damascus and Homs, which are also cultural and economic hubs for the country, meaning that Israel, in their fight against Hamas, has led an attack on a neighboring country that, as far as my research can tell, is not directly involved in Hamas's attacks or on their influence in the country. Which is a shame, because Syria very recently has been involved in anti-Islamic extremist warfare in their own country. As a matter of fact, Small Wars Journal has an essay on the Islamic State, that's ISIS in Syria, in the 6 weeks between December 8th, 2024, which is the day that former Syrian President Assad was overthrown, and the inauguration of President Trump. In the 6 weeks between those two events, the U.S., quote, quietly widened the territorial scope of its counterterrorism footprint in Syria more than threefold. They go on to say that this expansion has left the anti-terrorism efforts in Syria even higher than they were in 2014 to 2017 at the height of U.S. anti-ISIS warfare. They are doing this to fill a void being left by leaving Russian troops, which is an issue that continues to be discussed today. As a matter of fact, state.gov has a story running September 22nd titled Secretary Rubio's Meeting with Syrian President al-Shara, which is followed by a story from this morning titled Syria Seeks to Redefine Russian Ties, al-Shara Tells Putin in Moscow. The Syrians are reaching out both to America and to Russia, looking for some allies that might be able to help them out in their anti-terrorism fight and in their fight against, potentially, Israeli influence in their region. There was an Islamist uprising starting in 1976. It lasted about 8 years, and Syria found itself with very little support from their allies, particularly Russia and Iran, which is very unfortunate. So, obviously, this is a communication class. Why does any of this matter? Why is it important? Where are we going from here? One of the things that really struck me was that Syria is not picky about who is willing to give them help. The U.S. has been in there for a long time, fighting against ISIS and Hamas and any other, name another terrorist group. They have embraced that assistance with some pushback that you would expect with having a foreign power in your country doing military operations. But they've taken help from the United States in lieu of Russian assistance. But they did take Russian assistance for a very long time, and they're reaching out to Russia now to attempt to make use of their assistance as well. Like we've been talking about, Syria is a very old country. Their values change, the people there change, the culture evolves, lots of things are kind of fluid. But I think what we can learn from Syria is the relationship is only dead if you leave it that way. Their allies have changed and evolved quite a bit over the years. Most recently, Russia's been out. They're now trying to bring them back in. The U.S. is involved. And Syria survives today because it's willing to reach out, willing to communicate, and willing to develop a relationship with other countries, old or new, regardless of their previous reputation or previous relationship, in order to service the greater good. I think that's very tactical use of communication, use of outreach. It's very impressive to see in practice. But all of this comes back around to my primary point. Syria stands as a very old, very historically rich, very culturally rich culture and country, and it's the resilience of the people and their willingness to accept help from other countries when they need it that has helped them survive so long. Thank you very much for listening.